Paul, thank you very much for joining us. We are hours away, really, from finding out which two teams are going to contest the 2022 Premier Sports Challenge Cup final. Unusual situation in that the teams all played each other at the weekend. Let's start with the Belfast Panthers game. The Giants coming from 2 down and tying that with whatever it was, 0.4 seconds left. I mean, how big is that end of a momentum swing going into a cup game?
Well, I think it's big, first of all, in terms of the league, because that's 2 big points for Belfast to pick up in Nottingham, which is never easy to go in there and pick up points. I know this year it's probably been a little bit easier than some years gone by, but Nottingham's turned the corner a little bit recently. I've been playing better, and I've been picking up more points. So for Belfast to leave there with 2 points and, like you said, scoring with less than a second, I mean, that was really big for them and tough on the Panthers, but still think it'll give Panthers, some confidence going into the semi-final with Belfast.
Then the other semi, the one we're going to see live on Premier Sports. I mean, Cardiff and Sheffield, they played on Sunday. It went to a shootout. Each team has got one very big win against the other team in the other rink, and each team has got one post 60-minute win. Now Cardiff have 2, but I mean, that was a very tight game. Does Sunday have any bearing on Wednesday between those two?
I don't think that much because it was a close game, kind of what everybody expected, and it was kind of. I mean, these games right now they're being played out between Sheffield and Cardiff. They're almost like finals because to win the Elite League title, Cardiff have got to win basically every game to have a chance to get back in the running because Sheffield have so many games in hand. So, I mean, that's why it was probably a lot bigger game for Cardiff than Sheffield, and so that was a big 2 points in the end for Cardiff, but Sheffield still managed the points, so that doesn't hurt them too much. But going into the semi-final game, I mean, Cardiff are a team that are very capable. If there was one team that you would think, or a couple of teams maybe that could go into Sheffield and beat them in a big game like that, Cardiff would be one of those teams. They have good goaltending, solid defense, solid 3 lines with a couple of extra forwards they can slot in there. I mean, the depth is there, the quality's there, and they're a tough opponent for the Sheffield Steelers.
Well, in terms of coaching, a one-off game, it's no longer 2 legs, so it's just one-off, winner takes all. In terms of coaching, that Cardiff soaked up a lot of pressure on Sunday, and Carew stopped, I think it was over 40 shots. Are they going to be able to approach this game the same way now, given that it is winner takes all?
I don't think they're going to change too much. I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I mean, if it works for you and you find a way to win, then you're not going to change things too much. I mean, obviously they'll learn from the game and any weaknesses they had, any adjustments they need to make, they'll make. But one thing they can depend on is Carew. He's proven that he can win a game, and I think the team believes in him, and they believe they can sit back at times and he can absorb some shots and they can win games. And on the other hand, they probably don't think they want to open it up too much against the Steelers, who have a really good offensive team who can, score a lot of points, defensemen who could also add to the rush. And so they're probably thinking, let's play a smart road game. And that's probably the way they're going to approach it.
When a team like Sheffield are so good, especially transition and turning you on the rush, they're almost a team you don't want to go behind against. How do you set up against a team like that will just punish you if you turn it over?
Well, I think, the simplest thing is to make sure you always have, one of your forwards back. I mean, you don't want to give up the odd man rushes to a good offensive team. And that's pretty much stating the obvious. I think most coaches would tell you that not to be too aggressive with that third forward, keep them high and have them back. And I think Cardiff will probably keep an eye on that and make sure they're not too deep with their 3 forwards, especially in the offensive zone, which sometimes it's hard to defend against that third forward high too. So you might see Cardiff playing it a little bit safe with that third forward just to make sure they don't give up those odd man rushes. Because you're absolutely right. Those 3-on-2s, 2-on-1, Sheffield are pretty, they execute really well coached, and you give them those transition opportunities and they will score some goals against you.
Let's put yourself in Sheffield's shoes now. You played Caruth on Sunday. He was a brick wall, basically. He only let in 2, and one of them, the fluky one from Traverso that just looped over. Mm-hmm. Do you think Aaron Fox will be too worried about that going into this game, that they only scored 2 on him?
Well, I mean, I don't know worried. I think he'll probably just have a good think about it and think, okay, how can we approach this differently, to get some better scoring opportunities and maybe find some areas where you think you're going to score your goals from. And I mean, he's a good goalie, and they just have to, it's kind of when two teams like this match up, it's just like, the will to win, which team is just going to win those battles and fight the most for it. And that's what it's going to come down to, because, both these two teams want to get into the final.
And if you're Sheffield, who do you start? I mean, they have Stojanovic and Bruss. Bruss has tended to play the home games. He played 2 last weekend, 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit surprised he played both games. I thought maybe they would have split the games, but or unless they're saving Stojanovic for the semifinal and having him completely rested for that game. That could be what Aaron Fox was thinking. Is there an injury that we don't know about? That's a possibility too. So we'll just have to wait and see. I don't want to, guess what the coach is going to do. I think he knows who's going to play in the game against Cardiff, and sometimes you'll play the goalie who matches up better sometimes against the team. Stojanovic maybe has better numbers in elite league play, but maybe Rust in the Challenge Cup has been better, and maybe he's been better against Sheffield at times this year. So the coach got to make a tough decision. They're both very, very good. For some reason, if Stojanovic is healthy, I'm thinking he might start that game, but that's only a guess, and I'm not 100% sure on that.
Quick one just on the other semi while we talk about it. If you're the Panthers, you haven't beaten Belfast yet this season. You know how good, especially that top line with Pickenich and Goodwin and Conway are. How do you go into Belfast knowing you let in 7, I think, the last time you were there, and tactically play out that game?
Well, obviously, you've got to go in with a real good game plan, and everyone's got to buy in, everyone's got to execute. And I mean, of course, you can, we talked about it, just play smart and play a tight defensive game. Not that easy to do against Belfast, because you're right, they have speed, they have skill, they have more than just the one line that can score. A lot of if you look at in the second half of the season, Belfast, a lot of their players have started to score a lot more who didn't score in the first half. They seem to have found their confidence. That makes Belfast even more dangerous, especially at home. So, it's not going to be easy to shut them down. Carr's been hot lately. He's played really well, and they're gonna have to rely on him, because Belfast will get their chances. And if you're the Panthers, you probably want to stay out of the penalty box, because Belfast do have a power play that can fill the back of the net, and I think that's an area where you've got to be careful against Belfast.
Quick thing, overtime. It's not going to be the normal 5 minutes 3-on-3. It's a one-off game. It's going to be 10. Would you have fancied playing 10 minutes 3-on-3? That's a lot of skating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my good friend Chris Ellis sent me that this morning. He said, "Did you see this? It's going to be 10 minutes now." I agree with that. I think in a big one-off game like that, it should go to 10 minutes, and you'd rather see a goal scored to win the game in that 10-minute period. It is tiring when you're out there, and it becomes. Sometimes it's less tactical 3-on-3. Let's be honest. It becomes more man-to-man. And if you look at the better teams, and if you watch like the Olympics and stuff, 3-on-3, a lot of teams just played man-to-man and didn't really. There wasn't. Maybe backing through the neutral zone, you might back up in a system that suits your style of play. But in general, teams just pick up their men now and just play it 3-on-3. So you got to get the right guys out there on the ice. And matchups can be very important, because if you get a really quick 3 guys out there against slower players, that could be a big difference in that type of situation. So the coaches really have to be on their toes when it gets to that 3-on-3 situation.
Two more things about the tiebreak. I mean, the first thing I noticed a lot as well is the goalies have come into 3-on-3 a lot more. If you have a good puck handling goalie that you can throw it back to, and that seems to happen. And Carr is a very good puck handling goalie. Carruth handles the puck very well. Bruss does as well. And the second thing I would ask you is shootouts. If you know it's a one-off and you know it could go to a shootout, would you practice them as a coach?
I think in general, most players practice it after practice. They'll stay out, do some breakaways, and maybe a little bit more when you're leading up to a one-off game like that. You would think with 10 minutes, so 3-on-3, somebody would more than likely score, because 5-on-5, sometimes you get through the 5-on-5, but it's rare after 10 minutes that you go to a shootout. You might see, like, for example, in the Olympics, where you had 10 minutes of 3-on-3 and it did go to a shootout, because skating wise, these teams at the top level can really skate, and there's not many weaknesses there in the skating side of things. Whereas in the elite league, the guys aren't as quick, so there's more opportunities on the ice. And I'm comparing it, of course, to Sweden, Finland, for example. That type of level of team. Best teams in the world. So that's why you probably see more opportunities to enter in the elite league than you would against two teams that matched up like them. And I think I'd be surprised if it went the whole 10 minutes without somebody scoring, unless the both teams were completely exhausted. They couldn't move anymore on the ice, and they just thought, let's just hold on to the puck and go to a shootout. But I'd be surprised if they went to overtime and it wasn't decided in the 10 minutes.
Very good. And just looking ahead then from this, so obviously two teams are going to come out with this having not gone to the final. How much can that impact you losing a knockout game this late at this part of the season especially, and where does that kind of place all the teams going forward, especially the Panthers are a long way behind the top four. Cardiff have played a lot more games. How does that all kind of fit together in your mind?
Well, I mean, the Panthers, I think 20 points back right now. I don't, they're not going to win the league. I mean, it would be a real miracle if they did. They'd have to pretty much win out the season, and the other teams would have to lose a lot of games. I don't see that happening. Cardiff, the Sheffield have a lot of games in hand with Cardiff. So Cardiff are going to think their best chance at the moment is the Challenge Cup and possibly the playoff. Sheffielders still have that lead. The one thing I will say, though, if you lose a semifinal, it doesn't sting as much as losing the final. So I think the impact would be less because of that. If you went all the way to the final and lost, and I think that would be a little bit more disheartening. But in terms of will it affect the league, I don't think it will so much. But I think the teams see this as an opportunity to win a trophy and take the pressure off a little bit. Because, if you win a trophy, you've had a good year. I mean, when I was a coach, I thought if we could win a trophy, well, that's a good season. You know what I mean? Anything other than that is a bonus, I would think that the teams, if they don't win the semifinal, I think they'll recover from that, of course, and say, okay, what's up next for us? What's the next thing we could win? And possibly, depending who loses the game, well, then their goal will be that.
Cool. Right. Now I'm going to tempt you into some predictions here. Obviously, we haven't got Murph because he won't be here, and maybe we can get Chris Ellis online. But if you had to pick the two, who'd you pick?
To get to the final?
Yeah.
I mean, the Panthers have been playing better, but I still think that the Giants and Beskorowany in a big game picks up his game, I find, in that kind of game. So I would say that I would expect the Giants to win that, although the Panthers have been playing better, so it's not going to be an easy game.
If you were the Panthers, but would you almost fancy playing Belfast over one than potentially having to play them over 120 minutes?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think because in a one-off game, anything can happen. Your goalie can steal a game. Carl has some confidence going into that game because he played very well, obviously, the last game against Belfast. So yeah, I think they would be happy just with a one-off game against a team that can be very dominant at times. Because when Belfast win, they win by sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 goals, and so in a two-legged affair, it's tough to come back from that. So I think the Panthers will be happy with the one-off game. And
then in the other matchup, the one we're going to see, to be careful because there's going to be people in the crowd that are going to hate you one way or the other here. Yeah, I know. One thing I do see it being another close game, and it's really tough to. I mean, flip a coin, right? I mean, these two teams are really good. I'm struggling to say one team would beat the other one because I honestly don't know. You would think sometimes when the history that I saw is good teams playing one another to win back to back against a top team like yourself, it's hard to do. So because Cardiff won the previous one, I think maybe Sheffield will edge this one, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We will see you and Chris live tonight from the Utility Arena. I'm expecting another huge Steelers crowd as well. So see you. Face-off is at 7:30 live on Premier Sports. Coach, thank you very much and see you later. You're welcome, Luke.